I am Michael Shuman. I am an economist, lawyer, and business professor. I live in Palm Springs, California. Economics should be about community, but unfortunately, it is not. Any student of economics has a core course on microeconomics, which is about the economy of the firm, and a course on macroeconomics, which is economics at the nation state level. But what's missing is what's between the firm and the nation state level is the community. And if you can't get the economy to work for the community, it's not a very functional discipline. So my feeling is we need to invent principles and practices that make community economics work if we want to have a healthy economy. There's so many things we can do, but one thing is changing the way that we measure success. So we measure success now largely around what is the size of our gross domestic product. And I think most people understand that GDP is a terrible measure of well-being. To me, a much better measure would be, what is your degree of self-reliance? Another measure would be, what is the degree to which you own within your community, your own businesses and financial system? And then you could have a bunch of measures around labor standards and environmental protection standards. Those are the things we should be rooting our economy in. But let's just start with the first two that I mentioned, ownership and self-reliance. We have the potential to create local economies that are, I believe, at least 90% self-reliant. Right now, 70% of our economies are services. Those are easy to localize. And of the remaining goods, 20% are goods. 30% are goods, but 20% are what we call non-durable goods. Non-durable goods are things like food, paper, building materials. The thing about non-durable goods is that they weigh a lot and they have a low dollar value per unit weight. And what that means is that shipping them around the world is really expensive and dumb. So that's why from an economic standpoint, that's why there's a local food movement all over the world, because food is mostly water, and it doesn't make sense to ship water all around the world when we can produce the water for ourselves. The strategy of attract and retain outside corporations that is, as you say, at the center of most economic development strategy, we know from at least 36 studies, it does not work. And the reasons it does not work are manifold. One is the company usually doesn't stay very long. Another is they don't deliver the jobs that they promised when they come. Something like 90% of the jobs that are created by these outside companies go to outside people who move into the company. And many of these companies have made their siting decisions long before they even have the competition. So they're just running the competition to make sure that they can extract more money from the local government when they show up. But here is the one biggest reason why you don't want to do attract and retain economic development. It's too damn expensive. If I look in the United States, and Amazon a couple of years ago ran this competition among US cities to bid for the building of these of headquarters that they claimed would employ as many as 50,000 people. And bids came from maybe 600 US communities. And the typical promise from these communities ran at about $500,000 of municipal money per job. Now, at $500,000 per job, it actually is smarter for the city to put that money into a low-risk bond fund and pay a family a living wage in perpetuity and never have the company to begin with. So it's an irrational expenditure of money. But it's even worse than that, because the truth is that we know many examples of local business that will create a job for $500 to $1,000 per job or less. So why would a city want to throw away all of this money when you can instead nurture local businesses and get all of the additional benefits of local business, which include more income, more wealth, more jobs, better environmental protection, better civic participation, more public health from better food? We could go on all day about the benefits of local business, but it is just completely irrational to put a penny into corporate attraction rather than to focus like a laser on the nurturing of local business. I think that all businesses, big and small, had profound difficulty during COVID. But if you look, at least in the United States, at the distribution of businesses now compared to pre-COVID, in terms of size, it's not very different, which is to say that local businesses, smaller businesses, have pretty much the same survival rate as they used to have. And if you do an objective analysis, depending on how you define the word local, locally owned businesses comprise 60 to 80% of the jobs and the U.S. economy. It's most of the U.S. economy, and that number has not changed very much in the last generation. It changes in a couple of sectors that we are very attentive to. So an example would be retail. And there is no question that the monopoly of Amazon has decimated a lot of local retail establishments. And what has happened, though, if you take bookstores as an example, is that these institutions have reinvented their business model. So local bookstores are no longer about selling local books. They're about trying to inspire local learning and local community gathering. And so they're built around food and civic organizations and children's education. And this is why the local bookstores are expanding, actually. So that is what we are called upon to do. We don't surrender to global monopolies. We take the increased competition and we build local alternatives that are more competitive and more attractive. That's, I think, what the strategy needs to be. So I spend about a third of my time teaching for a green business school, the BARD MBA program in sustainability. And the reason I do that is that I see dozens of incredibly talented young business people who want to start socially responsible, small-scale businesses, and they are convinced that that is the way to change the world, and I'm convinced that I and as many of us who want to can and should be helping them. So I actually think that getting the right people into business education and supporting them with capital and peer support. Now, part of that is also getting rid of all of the advantages that bigger businesses have. So we've talked about some of those advantages, the corporate subsidies that are attracting outside companies. But the truth is that almost all corporate subsidies are in favor of bigger business. So I think that it behooves us to work with conservatives who hate subsidies too, and get rid of as many corporate subsidies as possible, and that will help local businesses to flourish.